My whole life, I always knew I was special. Even with no remainders, I could always move a decimal. Money on my mind while the girls that made un beso. Hustlers in my blood and it's running through my vessels. Just trying to clear the threshold, just trying to make a way. In my race against time, I could see an early grave. School to prison pipeline, 12 years a slave. Suspension and detention is conditioned for a cage.
The next topic we're going to discuss on Boxing Bros is Leonard Ellerbe says boxing holds people of color and women to a different standard. Let's take a look at what he had to say. And a woman boxer responded, and we'll take a look at what she had to say as well. Here's Leonard Ellerbe's tweet. Leonard Ellerbe said, I'll say what others won't. People of color and women are not afforded the same support or the same elevation system that others are. The reality is people like Floyd, Al, Steven, and myself are held to a different standard in boxing, and it's very unfortunate. Stay woke. That's what he said. He said, stay woke, commissions creeping. All right. So and here's what Raquel Pretty Beast Miller had to say. She said, yes, very true. And it is also very sad that men such as yourself, Floyd, and Al Heyman could help us Black women fighters by allowing us opportunities to be promoted and fight on your shows to showcase our skills to the world, but y'all don't. We're literally out here on our own. That was in response to what Leonard Ellerbe had to say. So I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to go with Conspiracy G on this one first. Conspiracy G, what's your reaction to what Leonard Ellerbe had to say and then what Raquel Miller had to say in response to that?
So I'll say this. I do kind of agree with Leonard Ellerbe's comments, right? However, I'm assuming he meant to say Black people because, people of color, that also will imply, the Latino population and stuff.
He said Steven, and I think he was including Steven Espinosa. That was my take on it, though. I don't know another Steven.
That's a good point. Yeah, that could have been Showtime Steven. But I'm assuming he's saying, like, because who Al and who he is and everything, like, it's probably harder to make big fights. People don't want to work with them because they're Black, this and the third. So I'm like, it's possible. It really is possible. You know what I mean? And it's clearly, we all know that women are held to a different standard in boxing. So he's definitely right about that. But when what Pretty Beast was talking about, I actually agree with her. It's like, but y'all aren't even invested in women boxing, So it's like, it's easy for you to say, but it's like, at the very least, we got freaking Eddie, is putting on for women's boxing. We got Marshall, all of them. You know what I mean? It's unfortunate that Clarissa got to fly all the way to the UK just to get some shine. You know what I mean? Like, where's her support from Al Heyman and the likes of those gentlemen? You get what I'm saying? Like, even Jake Paul is putting on for women's boxing. So, like, I don't know. I kind of felt like he shot himself in the foot. You know what I mean? Making this statement, he didn't really consider his role in the dynamic of the boxing world when it comes to women, and particularly women of color in boxing, but just women in general. You know what I mean? Because I feel like even the only person I could really say is like, hey, they're getting their just due is Katie Taylor. Everyone else is like struggling to just get exposure. You know what I mean? Including, two-time Olympian Clarissa Shields. So I don't know. I kind of felt like he shot himself in the foot making that statement. And, shout out to Sis for calling him out on that. And hopefully he responds, because I want to see him respond and see if he could do something. You know what I mean? Like for example, what's that sister that fought Jimenez? Remember, she got her
Franchon Cruz Design.
Yeah, so Cruz Design, right? Like, that performance was spectacular. It was dangerous. I was like, oh man, this girl literally got abused. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I haven't seen her since. She showed the most heart and grit in women's boxing, in my opinion. And she barely gets any shine, any exposure. And that's the problem with women's boxing. It's like, those are the type of fights that we should be highlighting. Those type of fighters we should be praising. You know what I mean? Because they're gonna put everything they got into that fight. You know what I mean? and they're gonna give us a great performance. Leonard Ellerbe, I'm like, bro, I hear what you're saying, man, but you're part of the problem too. Because if you're not actively trying to change, the dynamics of the sport, then it's like, why are you complaining?
All right, Trill Dollar Bizzle.
I was just say real quick, Ellerbe tried to say some stuff and got called out on his own stuff. That's basically what it is. You know what I'm saying? So make sure you don't throw stones if you live in the glass house. You know what I'm saying? So that's one test, that one lesson that was learned right then and there. Make sure, there's no crap in your backyard before you start talking about stuff in other people's yard. That's basically what I see. But so what Leonard Ellerbe was saying, duh. we know this. We know this. We know this from back in the days. Ain't nothing changed. But hey, but you have the power to make a difference and do some things. So you need to start putting your best foot forward. That's all I gotta say about that.
All right, dollar bill. Now TBE.
Yeah, he basically put his foot in his mouth with this one. Like, yeah, we all agree, like, people of color, women, and black fighters are held to different standards than their white counterparts. But you can't be saying this stuff if you're not really doing your just do. Like, you're not helping the movement at all, but you just out here crying on Twitter, and you got the power. You got the power to make things happen. So, Leonard Ellerbe, you gotta do better, man. And shout out to the sister that called him out for his antics.
Yeah, I think with this, he added women, and he probably should have just left that out. But he probably added women for the likes, but he didn't expect that a woman in boxing was going to call him out. And, Pretty Beast Miller, she said, hey, man, you don't help women. And it's an interesting thing because we're talking about how Clarissa Shields has to go over to the UK to fight Savannah Marshall. But Savannah Marshall used to be signed by Mayweather Promotions. And Leonard Ellerbe is Mayweather's guy. So we're talking about them actually having one of the most entertaining and one of the most valuable female boxers in the world on their stable, and they let her go. Just let her go. And now she's arguably about to be involved in the biggest fight. And you knew that fight existed because I'm pretty sure the reason they signed Savannah Marshall was because they know she beat Clarissa Shields in the amateurs. So my thing is that to me shows that they don't prioritize women's boxing because you had one of the most powerful pieces in women's boxing in your stable at Mayweather Promotions and you let her go. And I don't know how many shows she had with Floyd Money Mayweather. So there's that. And the other thing about women's boxing is, yeah, they are having a difficult time. And G pointed out how you got Jake Paul getting in there and it takes Jake Paul backing. And then Jake Paul gets in there and then Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor fight happens. There's this documentary on Chrissy Martin. And I don't know if all y'all know Chrissy Martin, but Chrissy Martin used to be, this white woman who would just give other women the business, but she was knocking them out.
Yeah.
Under the Mike Tyson undercards.
Yep, she used to be on the Mike Tyson undercards, and it's because Mike Tyson saw her fight once, and Mike Tyson said, I want her on my undercards. Mike Tyson advocated to have Chrissy Martin on his undercards, and that's why she was always on Mike Tyson's undercards. So that's on Netflix. I don't remember the name of the documentary, but it's crazy. If you look at Chrissy Martin's life, her life was crazy. But the point that I'm extracting from that is there are boxers out there, men, who could advocate on behalf of a women's boxer the same way that Jake Paul's advocating and doing his thing for Amanda Serrano. You can do like Mike Tyson did for Chrissy Martin. Mike Tyson just said, hey, I think she's ferocious. I think she's entertaining. I need her on my undercards. Just imagine if AJ's like, yo, I need this woman on my undercard. I need this. Like, get it done. You can get it done and help the women out. Now, getting back to what Leonard Ellerbe said, and you know me, everything. I don't think everything is race, but you'll be a fool to act like it's not harder for certain people because of their race. And we just went over an example of that. It was a lot harder for Carissa Shields just to get in the ring to confront Savannah Marshall to promote their fight than it was for Savannah Marshall to get in the ring to confront Carissa Shields. Think about that. Something as simple as that. Look at all the obstacles and hurdles Carissa Shields had to go through just to get in the ring to promote her own fights in comparison to Savannah Marshall. And she's more accomplished than Savannah Marshall. She's more renowned than Savannah Marshall. She's the one with the blue check on social media. Savannah Marshall don't even got a blue check. That means that she ain't really known like that. You know, and so all I'm saying to you is, yes, there are definitely avenues in boxing where it's a lot harder. Let's just look at all the announcer jobs. That's why we got a YouTube channel. I know, like, I'm never going to get an announcer job. You got Brian Custer. You know what I'm saying? He's not a Custer. It's just his name. You know what I mean? That's just his name. Brian Custer. You know what I mean? I ain't trying to say he's a Custer. That's my man. He cool. But then you got all the other announcers. You ever notice that most of the times when you see a black announcer, they're a former fighter.
Mm-hmm.
All the white announcers aren't former fighters, but most of the time when you see a black announcer or women, or you see a female announcer, they're former fighters. They don't just give that job. They give it to the former fighters. That's why when we first started the show and we were talking about boxing, people would be like, oh, y'all can't fight, y'all don't get in the ring or whatever. And I just say, for starters, you don't know what we can do. But it's funny that we have to be fighters in order to talk about boxing, right? But Al Bernstein doesn't. Right? Mark Kegel doesn't. Todd Gresham doesn't. Brian Kinney doesn't. Right? All these guys, there's much more. Steve Farhood. You get the point. Those guys don't have to fight in order to talk boxing, but we have to fight in order to talk boxing because it's been programmed in your mind. People of color or women talking about boxing, they got to be former fighters to know what they're talking about. Meanwhile, the white man can just grab a mic and talk boxing because he just knows. But the only way people of color or women can know about boxing is if they were former professional fighters. Think about that. Brian Custer doesn't even really call the fights. Brian Custer's like the host. He's like, oh, and this week we got the fights, whatever, and I'll interview this fighter. He don't sit down ringside and call no fights, though.
He was like, that's an exciting fight, but next week on the card.
He doesn't break down fights. He doesn't dissect fights. You see anytime you see a person of color sitting there calling fights, talking about fights, Abner Mares, I don't care who it is, they are former fighters. Why is that? They're training your mind to think that the only people of color and the only women who can analyze boxing, talk about dissect boxing, are people who were former professional fighters. Meanwhile, you're just conditioned to accept that any white man can just know what the hell he's talking about in boxing. Brian Kinney doesn't know a damn thing about boxing. I guarantee you Brian Kinney don't know how to throw a jab. The simplest part, I bet you he don't know how to do it. I bet you Brian Kinney doesn't know how to roll with a punch.
He don't know how to fight. He was like, to the other fighter, he was like, Sergio, you gonna protect me?
That was Gresham. That was Gresham. But the point I'm making is, just something as simple as that. You don't see how race plays into it. I tell you what, I can call them fights though. I can be there. I can do that. Hell, I'm not trying to toot my own home, but I think I'm better than half of them anyway. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that there aren't any greats because Al Bernstein's legend. My man Larry Merchant, legend. Who's my man? Jim Lampley, legend. You know what I'm saying? You got a lot of legends. I love a lot of these guys. They're great. But my point I'm making is, how come we don't have that many people of color who are not former fighters that we can say like them talking about the fight? So you get what I'm saying? Just something as simple as that you probably never even thought about has an impact. when we started this show, because people, oh, y'all gotta get in the ring. Why I gotta get in the ring to talk boxing? You're conditioned to think that. So yeah, hell yeah, we're held to different standards in numerous aspects of the game. But what the hell is your point, Leonard Ellerbe? We already knew that. So what are you getting at? What happened that made you say y'all are held to a different standard? What is it that's holding you back? Right? So I need a little bit more for that. It just seems like I don't know, he's looking to get people on his side for something, but I need to know a little bit more. But the answer to that is yes. But the point is, like, what are you trying to gain from it? Are you just trying to start a heated discussion? Are you just trying to get people on their seats? Because yes, it happens. It does happen. And a lot of people recognize it, a lot of people call it out, but that is what it is. And, you know, we can only do with it what we can do with it. And that's why you got the boxing bros.
Hey,
let us know how you feel in the comment section. Please like, subscribe, check us out on Instagram and Twitter, and please check out our podcast on all major streaming services. We are the Boxing Bros.